Today is Friday, Parashat Vaera, and in Chok Israel this week, but actually on Thursday, we learned an interesting halacha that says, "Chamisha devarim ha'oseh otam en cheskato lashuv mehen." There are 5 things that a person who does these averot, it's most likely, since there are things that are considered to be very trivial in most people who consider it to be not as important, it's very hard for people to do teshuvah. He might be doing these sins and deluding himself in the idea that he's done nothing wrong. First thing, האוכל מסעודה שאינה מספקת לבעליה, שזה אבק גזל, הוא מדמה שלא חטא ואומר כלום אכלתי שלא ברשותו. So he says here a person who's invited as a guest and the host has hardly enough food for him and himself and his family, and not even enough for his own family, for the host's family, and this person eats freely from that meal, and he says, what do you want? He invited me for his meal, so that's why I'm having like a regular guest. The person should be sensitive to realize that there is not enough for everybody and to refrain. Such a avera is like avak gezel. It's like a sort of dust of theft. It's like a subtle form of theft. Even though you were invited, you still have to be sensitive to that situation. That was the first one. The second one, המשתמש באבותו של עני, שהאבות של עני אינו אלא כגון קרדום ומחרשה, ואומר בליבו אינן חסרים והרי לא גזלתי אותו. Person who makes use of an object that was given as a security for a loan. Let's say a poor man needed a loan, and all he has is maybe a hammer or a hoe or like a shovel, something that is not very important. He gives it to you as security. The halakha is you're not allowed to use that item that he gave you as security, as a guarantee for the loan. You put it away and that's it. That's if somebody uses it. That's an avera, that's a sin. But a person can think, I've done nothing taken away from me. I'm returning to him the same shovel. Nothing happened to a shovel. I just used it because I needed it. That's also a sin that a person would have a hard time to do teshuvah from. And that's a person should be careful with these things. And the Rambam here tells us these are these things that the person should be careful with, because most people consider it to be not avera, and then they will not do teshuvah from it. The third thing, המסתכל באריות ומעלה על דעתו שאין בכך כלום, שהוא אומר וכי בעלתי וקרבתי אצלה, והוא אינו יודע שראיית העיניים עוון גדול שהיא גורמת לגופן של אריות, שנאמר ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם. So the third thing is a person who gazes at women who are forbidden to him, and he deludes himself in thinking this has no significance. I've done nothing wrong. I didn't have relations with her. I didn't touch her. I didn't come close to her. All I did is just look. And that also is a great sin, because the pasuk says, don't go wandering after your heart and after your eyes, because once you look, it can lead a person to mamash the avera itself. So that's also another thing people have a hard time to do teshuvah from. The fourth thing, המתכוון בקלון חברו, המתכבד בקלון חברו, אומר בליבו שאינו חטא. לפי שאין חברו עומד שם ולא הגיע לו בושת ולא בישו, אלא ערך מעשיו התומים וחוכמתו למול מעשה חברו, חוכמתו כדי שיראה מכללו שהוא מכובד וחברו בזוי. So what this fourth thing is a person who acquires honor for himself by putting another person down. In other words, we call that in English also one-upmanship. In other words, he says, he compares his actions to the actions of another person by showing the other person's actions in a negative light, and then showing himself on a pedestal, on a higher level, by saying, I'm not acting like this other person. And he thinks that's not a sin. The guy's not there, I'm not embarrassing him, he's not next to me where he would be embarrassed by what I'm saying. I'm just describing my actions, my good actions, my intelligence, as compared to the other person's lack of intelligence or good actions. So I'm just inferring that I'm better by comparison to the other person. And that way, the person is trying to gain more honor and more respect for himself. That is also a Vaera that people will have a hard time to do teshuvah from, because they might say, I didn't embarrass him, I didn't say nothing, I was talking about myself, comparing myself to him. That's also something to be careful with. And finally, the fifth thing, החושד בקשרים עובר בלבו שאינו חוטא, לפי שאומר מה עשיתי לו וכי יש שם אלא חשד, שמה עשה או לא עשה, ואינו יודע שזה עוון שמשים אדם כאשר בדעתו כבעל עבירות. So a person who suspects decent people, there are people who suspect of another of wrongdoing, and this person who is suspecting actually is kasher, he's done nothing wrong, he's a decent person, there's no reason to suspect him, but you suspect him. So the person who's suspicious say, I've done nothing wrong, I just had suspicions, that's all. I didn't tell him that he did anything wrong, but even having those suspicions in mind, that he may have committed something wrong, that suspicion in itself, choshed biksharim, somebody who's suspicious of those who are actually good people, decent, have done nothing wrong, that is a great avon, because he is regarding that person who's kasher in his mind as Baal Averot, as a person who's sinful, that is wrong. And actually, Hachamim say, Hoshed Biksharim Loke Begufo, a person who suspects others of wrongdoing, when the other person has done nothing wrong, can get punished. Himself, the person who was suspicious, would get punished by Hashem. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen, and Shabbat Shalom.